Hello, everybody out there on the recording. Looks like today there's a lot of clashes for the winter break, so we're just going to record this solo today. We've already, starting off today with Sif. Hey, finish off the Siman of Reishayin Gimel 7 today. The Shulchan Aruch says, "Kasuva go'onim hada in kiddush ala makom suda, fil achal davar muat o shasa kosi ayin." So the going to say that you are Yotze Kiddush Makom Suda Ayidei Shtias Yayin. Dafka Achal Lechem or Shasa Yayin about Achal Peres Loy. So when I says you have to eat bread or wine, but just to eat Peres, you're not Yotze. According to this, the moel on Shabbos morning, before making Kiddush, could consider the Beipri Guffin on the bris as his Kiddush and drink kos shel yayin, according to the Gonim. We show some kashir as long as he drinks a shiur of revis. The minhag still is to give it to a tinok to drink and not to drink it himself, and he does a bris before Kiddush. But theoretically, he could be Yotze if he has a shiur at the time of the Shtia skips. We'll see the details of that afterwards. But the Gonim itself, now we already spoke in the previous year that the Beis Yosef writes over here that the Gonim go even according to Tosfos and the Rush. The Tosfos and the Rush explained that the Maisa and the Gemara of Abai and Rabbah told the Talmidim Friday night they should, he made Kiddush Friday night before they went home, said Ti'imu midi, eat something. Because maybe maybe there's going to be, the nair will go out by the time you get home, and you're not going to be able to Yotze Kiddush. So Ti'imu midi, taste something over here now with my Kiddush. And Tosfos and the Rush say that we're talking about, when it says Ti'imu midi, taste something, it means pas, to eat a little bit of bread. So the Beis Yosef wants to say that the din of the Gaonim is not connected Tosfos in the Rush, who say you have to eat pas. Because what they're talking about, and this we discussed, that there are two separate dinim, the Beis Yosef needs to tell us in his words, in his short words, the two separate dinim Kiddush Makom Suda. The din Kiddush Makom Suda that you're actually Yotze the Suda, but there's a din Kiddush Makom Suda which tells you that even though you're not Yotze the actual Suda Shabbos yet, you are Yotze having enough of a Suda to be considered Kiddush Makom Suda. B'tzad the Kiddush that is considered Kiddush Makom Suda. So with that, the Beis Yosef explains that there's no steer between Tosfos and the din of the Gonim, because the Gonim are talking about your Yotze Kiddush Makom Suda by drinking a shiur of yayin. That's the Gabi, the Kiddush itself. It was become what's called a Suda because there's a Shtia Chashuva of yayin, of a shiur of Ravius of yayin. That's enough to be considered a Suda, to be Kiddush Makom Suda, although you're not yet Yotze Suda Shabbos. Okay, now just as a prat in this, the Taz wants to say that since the Megonim say you have to eat something after you Mekadesh, to Yotze, eat something or drink a shiur yayin. So Taz wants to say that it has to be dumya to eating something. Eating something is besides the amount that you drink to be Yotze Kiddush. To be Yotze Kiddush, you have to have a minimum te'ima. Te'ima will be a mala lugmov, which is filling up one side of the mouth. And that's considered a rov revis, the majority of revis. Since that's mala lugmov is the rov revis, and you have to have a achila, a te'ima of something that has considered a Suda besides that Kiddush itself, like you see by the Achila. So the Shti has to be doing to the Achila, just like the Achila is not, what you drink is not included in the Kazayas of the Zonas you would eat to be, let's say, the Kiddush Makom Suda. Also, the Yain itself needs to be a shiur revius besides the Mala Lugmov, which makes it into if it's just an exact shiur of a cup of revius, then you would have to drink almost 2 cups, or 1 and 51% of drink another cup, most of that cup, and then refill it, and then drink a whole other cup if it's a revius to be Yotze. And so the Taz says, according to that, then it's really usher for the moil to drink the yain. It's not just a minhag to give to the tinuk. It would really be usher because the moil is only going to drink that cup. It's not going to drink. They didn't say to drink 2 cups. It doesn't have 2 cups. Moil doesn't have 2 cups to drink at the time of the bris. So that's what the Taz maintains. The Magen Avram in Ches, the lashon of the Shulchan Aruch is mashma you just drink a revis. It's the Taz seems to be a little bit missing from the Shulchan Aruch. The Magen Avram also in Sifkat and Ches that explains what does it mean you're chayav ala bracha. You have to drink a shiur that you're chayav bracha. Perish jushas or revis. Chayav bracha achrona. The amount you need to drink is a revis. So the Magen Avram is mashma that it's kapshito, just a revis. The problem is that later on in Sifkat and Yud Beis, Magen Avram quotes the Levush and the Bach that the Taz quotes as well, that you need to drink another kos besides the first kos of Kiddush, and then the second shtia is considered a suda. Magen Avram quotes it b'shem Omer, b'shem Levush and the Bach, and it's not so clear if he's really means he's paskin in that way, or because that would be a stira to the Sifkat and Ches where he says that just all you have to drink is revis. Unless in Sifkat and Ches he's saying what he really holds, he's letting you know in Sifkat and Yud Beis that there is another shita out there. It's not so clear what the Magen Avram holds. The Mishnah Berurah does bring it down as but you should be machmir to do this, to drink only, if you're going to be yotzei, to drink the extra revis besides the mother lugmav. He says unless it's dachakloi yayin, that you don't have so much wine around, so then it can be somewhat on the Stam Lashon Shulchan Aruch and the Stam Lashon Magen Avram and Ches to as long as it's Shabbos morning where it's more kal, it's only midrabanan to be somewhat on that. If you have to be somewhat on drinking the wine to be yotzei kiddush makom suda, then you can be yotzei on you can be yotzei if you need to b'shas tchak with just one revis. But ideally, Mishnah Berurah does say to be yotzei the Dasataz and the Bach and the Levush that are all saying clearly that you need to have more than just a revis. Now the etzem din of the Beis Yosef over here, which the Gonim works also according to Tosfos and the Rush. Rabbi Kiva Eger here has a tremendous kasha in the name of the Drisha, which is really a kasha on this whole din over here of the psak of the Gonim, if it's the halacha. So the kasha of the Drisha is that the din of the Gonim, that shtias yayin works for Kiddush, only works according to the Rashbam back in the sugya of Dvar Metunin Bracha Lacharei Mem Komam. The Rashbam said that, if you remember, that the din Dvar Metunin Bracha Lacharei Mem Komam, those things that require you to go back and eat b'makom, which that signifies that you're in the middle of a Kiyah Suda. The Rashbam said that applies to anything which is has a long bracha achron. It has the main shalus at the end because that is kain. That's a chashivas of that bracha. It's mitzvah chashivas that you need to go back not only by benching but also by main shalosh. Anything that's mizonos or teros of Eretz Yisrael that need the long bracha achron, the main shalosh, to go back. You have to go back for that to sit down at b'makom, and therefore, so all those things are considered dvar mitzvah and bracha lacharei makom. Tosfos, if you remember, in the Rush asked many kashas in the Rashbam from the sugya there, and Tosfos came out that it's only pas or mizonos. It's a din not in the bracha achrona, it's a din in the kfiyah suda, the chashivas suda, which that just only applies to pas as well. Mizonos would be considered in that as well, but not to other paris and not to yayin. So the Rebbe Kiveger from the Drisha is asking that the din of the Gaonim, that the yayin should be considered a suda for Kiddush Makom Suda, that's only if you hold yayin as dvar mitun and bracha lechem kamam. It creates a matzav of a suda that therefore obligates you to go back to bench in that place. Masha Inkan yayin is not one of those things like Tosfos was machriya not. So then the din of the Gaonim would not apply. It's not a suda. It's not a suda chashuva. So it's totally in that, and therefore it's really a big kasha on him. He holds us a big kasha that how does the Shulchan Aruch bring this down? And the Shulchan Aruch himself paskin previously that you can only be yotzei kiddush makom suda with pas or mizonos, not with other peiros and other things. There seems to be a problem with the Shulchan Aruch. It's a kasha of the Rebbe Kiveger, and furthermore, he asks as well that it's a kasha for the sugya that according to the Rush, the Kiddush Makom Suda is deraisa. He makes a cheshbon like this. I hope you saw the behavior. Well, I'll just try to speak it out. That the Rush holds Kiddush Makom Suda, if you remember, is deraisa. You're not yotze Kiddush deraisa without eating with the Suda. So according to that, what's the Gemara in the Gemini of Nazir? The Gemara is talking about someone who makes a netter of a Nazir or a netter not to drink wine, and it says over there that applies even to Kiddush and Abdullah. So the Gemara says Mushba ba'imim b'har Sinayu. That it's the way Tosfos learns over there. It's like Tosfos learns that it's a rhetorical kasha. The kasha is that it's not really asking a kasha Mushba ba'imim b'har Sinai. It's saying that are you Mushba ba'imim b'har Sinai? Are you acquired from the Shua of Har Sinai, which we have on all the deraisas to drink yain on the night of the Shabbos night? Of course, we have no Shua of Har Sinai because Tosfos says later on in Daf Kuf Vav and Psachim, and it seems to allude to that also in Nazir, that the din of, at least according to the way Rabbeinu Tam learns in Tosfos and Nazir, that the Kiddush itself is deraisa, but Kiddush ala yayin, the fact that we do it on yayin, that's only midrabanan. So therefore, what's the problem? Why shouldn't even though a netter can't be chal, or shua can't be chal on another mitzvah that you're already mechuyev in, because we say mushba ben Har Sinai, you're already mushba from Har Sinai, not to listen to Mekana mitzvah. You can't take a shua on that to break that shua. Ain't shua chal al shua. So that wouldn't apply to yain on the night of Shabbos because we're not mechuyev midiraisa to drink yain on Friday night. That's the way Tosfos learns the kasha. The Maskana of Tosfos over there. So Rekiveger asks that according to the Rush, that Kiddush Makom Suda is deraisa, then why is that a rhetorical question over there? You should be mushba. Sometimes you will be mushba Har Sinai to drink wine Friday night in a case where you don't have any other food to eat. All you have is the yayin, and you should be yotze Kiddush Makom Suda according to the Gonim with yayin. So you are mechuyev midiraisa to drink wine in that case when that's the only food you have. Do yotze Kiddush Makom Suda, which is deraisa according to the Rush. So with that, the Rebbe Kieger has a kasha on this psak of the Shulchan Aruch, that how can he be paskening that according that he paskens previously like Tosfos in the Rush about the din of dvarim tuna bracha lechem koman. Here, how can he pasken like the Gaonim, the Yotzei Kiddush Makom Suda with yayin? And according to the Gaonim, it's not just in the morning you Yotzei like that. You Yotzei also Friday night. If you just drink enough wine, you Yotzei also Kiddush Makom Suda. That's Rebbe Kieger's kasha. So, and he remains with a kasha on this din. But I think you can answer the kasha with the Gra over here in Shulchan Aruch. The Gra says that the makar of the din of the Gonim, that why are Yotzei Kiddush Makom Suda with wine? So the Gra says it's from the Gemara in Brachas Daf Lamed Hey Lamed Beis that the Gemara is explained over there. Why does yayin get a special bracha on its own? Why would the mala the bracha from Brei Priya Eitz to Brei Priya Gafen? So the Gemara has a back and forth. Maybe it's because yayin is Zion, because it's amazing, it sustains you. So it brings other things that also sustain you. We're not mala the bracha on them. So the Gemara goes on to say, no, it's because yayin is sa'id. It creates a suda. It's not just sustains you, but it's mamish so'id you. It brings you to a higher level of suda, of satiation than just Zion. And Rashi says over there that on the spot in Brachos, Rashi says that Sa'id Yoser Zion. Suda, what's considered a Suda, that's even greater than what just gives you mazonos, gives you any sustenance. Now that din over there, that Yain is Sa'id, that's the Kuliyama. That is not totally in a machlokas of Dvar Mitzun and Bracha Lacharem and Komam or not. That both Tosfos and the Rush that say that you need pas for Dvarim Tuna and Bracha Lachem and Koman agree that yayin is soy. They agree that you make a special bracha for Brei Priya Gafen on yayin. So the way the Gra is explaining it, then it makes perfect sense that what the Beis Yosef says, that the din of the Gaonim is the Kuli Alma. It's not totally in whether it's dvarim tunin the bracha lechem or not. To be in economy, to be a suda for suda Shabbos, to really consider mamish suda Shabbos, you need pas. You need dvarim that are tunin the bracha lechem that to be a real suda Shabbos. But we're not. Beis Yosef clearly says that there's two dinim. Like I said last week, there's a din suda legabe b'yotzei kiddush, and there's a different din suda legabe b'yotzei suda Shabbos. It's enough of a suda for kiddush to be soid, and that explains why it's the kuli alma. That explains why Tosfos in the Rush, Beis Yosef says we'll agree to this din because it doesn't matter if it's not dvarim tunin bracha al cherem l'komam. Even according to that other shita, not like the Rashbam, certainly the din of the gonim will apply. And that'll answer Rabbi Kveger's kasha. And as far as the kasha, the Gemara in the beginning of Nazir, so in Echanami, the beginning of Tosfos over there, and also the Shitas Rashi and others, is that the kasha of the Gemara in Nazir is that how could the Shvua Bichal, you are mushba b'Harsina to drink wine Friday night. According to Rashi, that holds that yayin is kiddush al yayin is deraisa, which you'll see later on in Kuvav. So then it's clear that the Gemara's kasha is not a bitmia; it's a real kasha. It's asking how can shvu bichal an yayin leil Shabbos? You're mushba b'oimid b'Harsina to drink wine, whether according to Rashi because kiddush al yayin is always deraisa, or sometimes according to the Rush because you'll need the wine to be yotze the suda deraisa of the kiddush makam suda to be yotze the kiddush al yayin. So there's no raya against the din of Shulchan Aruch and the kasha of the Gemara and Nazir because it's a real kasha. I thought one more raya as well is that when Rabbi Kveger also has a problem with the gonim from the Gemara of Rabbo, and Rabbo says over there to imu midi, eat something to be yotzei my kiddush, and eat something. And Tosfos over there says pas. So Rabbi Kveger holds that that's a raya that Tosfos doesn't hold of the gonim. Just let them all drink wine, and they'll all be yotzei with wine. Why pas? So I think the answer is pashit that because the Gemara, what Rabbo was trying to be marviach over there, like we said last week, Rabbo was attempting not just to have his talmidim Abaya and other talmidim be yotzei just kiddush, but makom suda to be yotzei the kiddush itself. He was trying to have them be yotzei the suda because perhaps they're going to get to where they're going. The candle will be out. They won't be able to eat a suda at all. They won't be able to find it. Won't be able to wash and eat a suda. So he wants them to be not just to be yotzei kiddush, but also to be yotzei suda. To be yotzei suda, that makes sense that it has to be pas. And it's a riot to what I'm saying is that Tosfos over there did not say pas or mazonos like he said in the other Tosfos in the sugya of Devar Metunin. He said dafka pas because even if you yotzei kiddush makom suda idei mazonos, but you're not yotzei the suda Shabbos by having just some mazonos. So that's why Tosfos dafka said pas in the sugya of Rabbah to make sure that they're yotzei suda Shabbos. So the sugya there, the subject is not kiddush makom suda, it's suda Shabbos. The Rabbah wanted to be yotzei. Therefore, it's not a kasha at all. So it's not a raya at all that Tosfos doesn't hold like the gonim, because the gonim are not talking about being yotzei suda Shabbos. They're just talking about having enough kiddush makom suda to be yotzei kiddush. So therefore, the din of the Shulchan Aruch stands, and there's no kasha. Rabbi Kveger's kasha is not a kasha. Lenus daiti. I mean, of course it is. You have to know whenever you answer a kasha Rabbi Kveger, then you have to say, okay, now what does Rabbi Kveger hold? But we have to come and defend the Shulchan Aruch and understand how we can answer out the Shulchan Aruch in this psak. So after all this said and done, though, the Ma'aseh of the Mishnah Berurah, a few things. The Mishnah Berurah does, getting back to the other nakuda of how much you have to drink. So the Mishnah Berurah says that you should have another revis besides the original kos to be all the achronim. But in the Sharat Tzion, on that Mishnah Berurah Chav Zayin, on the Sharat Tzion there, he says, nevertheless, you could be makel like the Stimas Magen Avram in the Shulchan Aruch, just to drink one revis, if as long as it's kiddush of the day, which is only Rabbanan, but not to be samach on that for the kiddush of Laila of night. They do ask a steer in the Mishnah Berurah, then Reish Samach tests, but when he talks about saying kiddush in the shul Friday night, in the minute to say kiddush or to be mitzvah the orchin, There he just says a revis. He doesn't say revis plus another kos. So there's somewhat of a steer in the Mishnah Berurah even by Friday night. But it's definitely not good to rely on that for Friday night, because there, where he speaks about it with Farish, he says not to rely on it. But Kiddush during the day, if you have only revis to drink, then certainly okay. You can be yotzei if you need to. Now, since the tam of the gonim is based on the gra, is that yain is soed, so there's a question in poskim whether or not the soed shavo that has the extra aspect that the bracha went up for Beper Agafen for a Suda. Does that apply not only to wine but also to grape juice? Could you yotzei the din of the gonim with grape juice to drink? You drink, let's say the most machmir shita, you drink a little bit, you drink a Lugmav, and then you add another revis, or just a revis. Does that work with grape juice equal to wine, or do you say dafka wine because it's shaker, it's stronger, it's more soed? So it's brought down Rashim Rebel Yashiv that taka grape juice is not good enough. However, it's brought in the name of Reb Nissim Karelitz and my Rebbe Reb Shalom Zalman, that's all, that grape juice is good enough. I'll just relate a little story to you that I once asked Reb Shalom Zalman that I mentioned about being yotzei daled kosos with yain. He said, for sure, of course, you yotzei with grape juice for daled kosos for Leil Seder. So I said to him the taina of Ramosha Feinstein. Ramosha taina is that in order to be derech cherus, to consider derech cherus, like the Gemara says later on, we'll get to it later on, Rosh Hashem and Arbi Psachim, that the daled kosos need derech cherus. Maybe it's only derech cherus, only the way of freedom, if somebody will actually drink actual wine. So Moshe says that it should be at least a third wine. It could be mixed with grape juice, but at least a third wine in order to be yotzei derech cherus. So I asked him, Shalom Zalman, are you yotzei also derech cherus with just grape juice? And he knew what I meant. He knew, I guess, about the tshuva of Moshe. So his answer to me was, and I quote, speaking about grape juice, his answer was, and I quote, Zeyayin, 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 Zeyayin. So I got the impression that Rosh Zalman held that grape juice has the din of wine. I wasn't foolish enough to say, I get the impression that Rosh Shiva says it. He made it as clear as can be. So he just holds across the board the grape juice is considered wine for everything, and including this as well. Let's say Kiddush Makom Suda also with grape juice. Now, that's what the Mishnah Berurah says that according to Rav Poskim, it doesn't help to drink the wine, the Makadosh, unless the other Soadim, the other people that are being Yotzei, they all have to eat something. They can't just be Yotzei with the fact that I drink wine when I make Kiddush for them. They have to drink also a shiur of wine or eat some mazonos. But he says, Lechol Sharmin Magadim Aperis Lamahani. If they're just going to eat some other peiros, or they're going to eat other snacks that are not mazonos or not wine, it doesn't work. He says, however, the Shilta Giborim in our sugya, one of the later Rishonim often quoted, he holds that even peiros help, and he quotes the Chayadam that if chalash liboy, if you feel weak, or especially hungry, you feel weak. So in other words, it's a little bit of a shas tzchak, it's a little bit of time and necessity. Then you're allowed to rely on the Shilta Giborim, at least during the day, where Kiddush Makom Suda is only D'Rabbanan, the whole Chiyuv Kiddush is D'Rabbanan. We shouldn't rely on that at night, just to eat peiros. Now, so that's the psak of the Mishnah Berurah. So in the case of deed, let's say you're at a Kiddush, ideally you should eat mazonos to be yotzei Kiddush Makom Suda. But if it's a difficult situation, you're hungry and you're feeling weak, then you can be yotzei with eating peiros, or for that matter, it comes up often. It's a shaila like on Chol Moed Pesach, where there is no mazonos, to eat, let's say, potato kugel, other things that are, or shakel cake, or things like that, to have some koach. So Mishnah Berurah is saying that based on the Chayaram in the Shilta Giborim, if it's a time of need, then you could be yotzei with that as well. But generally speaking, not. So Moshe Feinstein, I gave out the Amar Makonos, the Tshuva, in Yordea Chelik Beis, Simen Kuf Samach Gimel, Dira Maschil Ubedavar Echad Shietze de Kiddush. There, Rav Moshe has the long hachra. He wants to prove from the sugya of Shmuel and our sugya that Shmuel, it says Zinun Segian. Many times he would be Makadosh up in the aliyah, up in the upper loft or on the upper floor, and then he would come down and make Kiddush again. But he would come down La'ara back to the first floor and make another Kiddush. So it's mashma. Moshe says it's mashma in the Gemara. He wasn't honest to do Kiddush up there. It wasn't like he'd make Kiddush and then something unexpected happened. Because then you wouldn't say on that Zimnin Sagi many times. He wouldn't have many times have an onus like that. It sounds like he did it l'chatchila. Often he would do that. So how could that be? What would he have done to make Kiddush up there that it shouldn't be a bracha levatala to make Kiddush down on the first floor in the main kitchen or wherever, the main dining room? If you already made Kiddush upstairs, why isn't it not a bracha levatala to do that l'chatchila? So Moshe says a yisod gadol, a tremendous yisod, explaining what Shmuel tells us, what this Ma'aser of Shmuel is telling us that the din of ein Kiddush elav makom suda we paskin is makev, the suda is makev having a Kiddush. It's not pshat that without a suda it's also to make Kiddush. If you don't have something like yayin to drink, let's say you held like the Bach and the Taz, and all you have is exactly the Shiur of a Revis. You don't have enough wine to drink another Shiur to be outside without the yayin, or I don't know, for some reason you can't drink the wine. Someone else will drink it, and you're just going to eat peiros. So you're not really yotzei kiddush makom suda. You're not yotzei the suda with that at all. Rav Moshe says that in kiddush ela makom suda, it's not pshat that without a suda you're not allowed to be mekadesh. Even without a suda, like you want to eat peiros, if you have things that you can't eat without kiddush, like fruits, so you're not allowed to eat it without kiddush. So you need to make kiddush in order to eat them. So the pshat in kiddush ela makom suda doesn't mean that you can't make kiddush and eat those peiros. It just means that if you eat those peiros, you're not yet yotzei kiddush in a way that if you go, you eat your suda later, that you're patur from kiddush. Rather, you need to make another kiddush. So in kiddush ela makom suda, you're not yet yotzei your kiddush for the day by making kiddush and eating peiros, because it's without makom suda, unless you go ahead and make kiddush. You make kiddush again later on. So he wants to say that that's pshat and Shmuel. That's Zimun Sagi. Many times you make kiddush upstairs, I guess where they davened or whatever, and they had some pears up there, some nuts, whatever, something he wanted to eat some. He was probably hungry and didn't want to wait till the suda. So right away they make kiddush in order to have their pears, and that's mutter. And therefore, and then when he went downstairs, since he wasn't yet yotzei kiddush, b'makom suda, now he has to make another kiddush at the time of the suda to be kiddush makom suda. So that's a tremendous kiddush of Rav Moshe, and I actually, for many years had big tainas on people that do that only eat pears, and after I saw this Rav Moshe now in the sugya, then I totally changed my outlook on it, because I see that the Ma'aser was wrong. Rav Moshe passes this l'chatchila. It's interesting that Rav Moshe does not go into the shaila, Mishnah Berurah, the Chayada, and the Shulta Gibora, and the whole thing Mishnah Berurah talks about. He just says it independently on his own. It's shot in the sugya that arrived from Shmuel that you're allowed to make kiddush and just eat peiros, and therefore you can extrapolate that. So he says if there's a time of need, or then you can let's say Chol Moed Pesach and Shabbos, you just want to eat the potato kol. You're not washing and eating matzah there in shul, so you're allowed to do that. Similarly, I gave out the Marmokum, the Betzalel Chochma. That's the Rabbi Betzalel Stern, the Vienna Rav in Chelik Daled Sin and Beis, that he's going on the Shari Tshuva. The Shari Tshuva on our sif over here brings down b'shem the Guinness Rodim. That's the Shals and Tshuvas of the Prima Godim, the Guinness Rodim, that has a kasha on making kiddush on mazonos. That maybe only yayin but not mazonos, and he brings b'shem the Birchei Yosef. The Shari Tshuva brings to the Birchei Yosef that for sure the minig is to make the yotzei kiddush on mazonos, but on yayin though he has a problem with that. He has a problem with being yotzei with yayin. I don't see if I see it here. His words. not see, finding it here. Oh, it's Zion. The minig olam is for sure to eat mazonos after kiddush to be yotze, and then to afterwards say and after bracha, and then eat later on the actual suda. It goes. Sometimes people go to a bris or they go to a beis chasen, and there is no mazonos there, and someone makes kiddush and all there is different fruits and coffee. You shouldn't taste anything at all, and doesn't help the fact that the one that makes kiddush, he drinks the whole kos, that he's yotze according to the gonim. That's only for the guy who drank himself, not for everybody else. So he's clearly saying the Shar Tshuva that pretty much not, you can't be samach on the Shulta Giborim. You'd have to eat actual mazonos. So the B'tzalach Chochma was asked on Akasha on the minig his shul that he allows people they make kiddush and people sometimes eat just potato kugel and things like that in the shul. How can he do that? It's against the Shar Tshuva. So he says, Chas v'sholem, to think that I forgot the Shar Tshuva. I know that, of course I know the Shar Tshuva. He brings a number of other achronim. He quotes other shalos and shuvas, other achronim that say not that way. That they bring a raya from the Gemara, Ti'imu midi, just eat something. Lashon Ti'imu midi is mashma that mamash just something ba'alma, not anything special, just something. Ti'imu midi. That's to me it's a shver raya because Tosfos on the spot says Hainu pas. So how can you be better than Tosfos? But anyway, he brings a raya from Radvaz, Shalos and Shuvas Radvaz, which is already Rishonim that says Meferish like the Chayodam, and like the Shulta Giborim, that you can be mekel makam docha ktsas in a place that's a little bit of a need, that let's say somebody feels weak or whatever, or he says somebody who is sensitive to eating a lot of sugar, and so you eat the mazonos too much sugar in there, can't eat the mazonos that's there, it's full of sugar, then you can be yotze with having some perus and a cup of coffee to be yotze the kiddush when there's a case of need. Now the chiluk, if you look carefully between the B'tzalach Chacham and Rav Moshe, is that B'tzalach Chacham holds that if you eat the perus and eat whatever the little bit of snack at the kiddush, not mazonos, you're yotze kiddush. Not only yotze for them to eat that stuff, eat what you're eating, you're yotze kiddush makom suda. Period. So later on, when you go to your suda, you don't have to make kiddush again. Whereas Rav Moshe holds you're allowed to eat it there, and it's not a problem kiddush makom suda. But Rav Moshe clearly says that there's two dinim kiddush makom suda. You yotze it's on the kiddush itself, but not for this when the suda comes up. You actually do need a new kiddush at the time of the suda. That's the chiluk between Rav Moshe and B'tzalach Chochma. So I certainly would think it's in Lanu Gadol Rav Moshe that for sure that overtakes the B'tzalach Chochma. Maybe it's just good to know that there is such a shita Shas Chak. The Nekudas Machlokas is that according to the B'tzalach Chochma, you have to say that the Lumbus, his svara is Kiddush Makom Suda. You can clear Chakira. Is Kiddush Makom Suda a din in the Suda or a din in the Kiddush? Is it that the Suda needs Kiddush or the Kiddush needs the Suda? So if it's just a din in the Kiddush needs to be a Chalos Shem Kiddush. Michal, the name Kiddush, it needs to be Makom Suda, and you hold that Peros, B'diavad is considered not the Suda to be Yotzei, then you're Yotzei Kiddush, period. Then it's not that the Suda later on needs a Kiddush, it's a Kiddush needed a Suda, and it had a Suda. So later on, he holds you don't need to have a Kiddush Makom Suda, you already Yotzei that. And I found later on in one of the later tshuvas where he answers kashas on himself, he explicitly spells that out, like we're saying, this Lumdus, that it's enough to be Chal the Shem Kiddush. Once you Yotzei Kiddush, you Yotzei. Who says you have to make Kiddush twice? But Rav Moshe is learning out that way. His whole Kiddush Makom Suda is a din in the Suda. So even though you might be Yotzei Kiddush mitzad the Gavra, now the Gavra is allowed to eat the Peros at the Kiddush because you heard Kiddush, so it's a matir to be able to eat those Peros. But the Maisa, you're still missing Kiddush Makom Suda inside your Suda needs a Kiddush. And therefore, when you get to your Suda in the day, even though you already ate something before, you need another Kiddush on the Suda, and that's for sure how we should do. Okay. Going on to Sif Vav. He says in Sif Vav, the Shulchan Aruch says, "V'im kiddush b'beso v'shama shchena v'shulchan aruch lefanov." If you're making kiddush in your house and you say it loud enough that your next door neighbor can hear it, let's say you have an old lady sitting next door, and you don't feel like going over there. You open the window, and she can hear it. You can't see it, but otherwise for sure it works. But they can't see each other, but she can hear you. You say it nice and loud. So if you did that, you're yotzei. The shopper having makom suda is considered a makom suda as long as you have everyone had kavanah to be motzi and kavanah to be yotzei. So the Magen Avraham points out over here that it sounds from Lashon Shulchan Aruch that it's a Lashon b'diavad. He didn't say you're allowed to do it. It says in kiddush. If you did it, then you're yotzei. It's considered kiddush makom suda. Magen Avraham disagree. He doesn't. Either he's disagreeing or he's explaining the Shulchan Aruch as lav dafka. It doesn't really mean b'diavad. He means even l'chatchila you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to do it. There's no reason not to. Because the chacham is staber. It's a staber like that. That as long as she's the lady next door is hearing the kiddush in a place where she's being yotzei, and he has kavanah to be motzi her. It doesn't make a difference whether he's standing with her or he's standing in another place in his own house. As long as she can hear, there's no reason not to be. So Magen Avraham says you're allowed to do this l'chatchila. So Mishnah Berurah has problems with it in Bir Halacha that why should this be l'chatchila? I mean, first one shal he has about it why just generally why do you need to have kavanah b'yotzei? Taking a step before the kavanah, how can it be l'chatchila if we find other places that back in Hilchos Suda that in order to be yotzei, ideally you should always sit down together, be kovei hamakom together, to be motzi somebody else on a brachas hanenin or brachas in general. It has to do with the Hilchos Suda. You should sit down together and be kovei together. And over there he says even if they stand in one place and they have das, that's the shaila when a lot of the Litvisha, like myself also, we have a minhag to sit down when we make kiddush. We make, let's say Friday night we make the psukim standing up like edus, and then we sit down for the bracha. Or Shabbos morning also we try to sit down for the bracha. But it says over there though that also back in Hilchos Suda that if you stand in one place with kavanah to be yosef, then that might also be considered, as long as you're in the same room and stand in one place with kavanah to hear from the other person, it's also considered a kfiyas. But if you're in another place legamri or just walking around or another place legamri, then you're missing kfiyas. So how could that be l'chatchila to be yosef this way? Maybe b'diavad, but why l'chatchila? So he wants to say maybe you can say b'dochak that the kavanah, let's say, that creates a kfiyas. That creates a kfiyas, and that's why it's mutal l'chatchila, which it's obviously very difficult to say that because every time, even when you're in the same room, no matter what, you always have to have kavanah to be yotzei. So why is there ever a mile to sit or stand still if the kavanah itself is going to work for that? So anyway, that's a problem. Perhaps that's one of the reasons why the Shulchan Aruch only says a lashon b'diavad, not a lashon l'chatchila, and perhaps and maybe there's other reasons as well. So, but the Maisa, the Magen Avraham Sof Kol Sof does say that l'chatchila, and Mishnah Berurah passes that way. You're allowed to do this even l'chatchila. There's also ha'ara here on the fact that Shulchan Aruch says you need to have kavanah to be yotzei. The question is why? Maybe you have to have kavanah to hear. But since Rabbi Kiveger has a kasha here that many poskim say in Reishu Gimel and Hilchos Brachos that the din of kavanah to be yotzei in general, the din mitzvahs kavanah, we say in Siman Samach. The Magen Avraham says in Siman Samach, where we paskin over there mitzvahs kavanah. There the Magen Avraham says in Hilchos Kriyas Shema that the din mitzvahs kavanah that we paskin that's only by mitzvahs deraisa, by mitzvahs derabanan, even without kavanah you're yotzei. Here we're talking about kiddush, which is derabanan, because you already yotzei kiddush in shul Friday night, as the Magen Avraham asks in another place. The Chinuch speaks about that. So he answers that we're talking about here in Friday night, we're talking about a case where you did not have kavana to be yotze in your tefillah and shul. And that, therefore, it remains for you deraisa. And you can say pashut also. You're also making kiddush for the old lady next door. She for sure didn't daven in shul to have kavanah to be yotze kiddush. So that's why it's for sure for the shomim, for those that are hearing, it's deraisa. And once it's deraisa for them, then you have to have kavanah to be yotze, and to be yotze them, you need kavanah as well for them. So it's pashut why the Shulchan Aruch says you need kavanah. Now going on to Sif Zion, Yesh Omrim She'ein Mekatshim Elo L'Or Haner. Some say, which is the Mordechai, one day on the rush, that you need to have kiddush next to the Or Haner because based on the sugya of Rabbah, the Rabbah said, Dilma is akra l'choshaga. Maybe you're not going to have a ner, and from there you learn that we see that kiddush needs a ner. Kiddush needs a ner to do it next to the neros. The Yesh Omrim, the second shita holds. This is the psak of the Shulchan Aruch. As remember, we've spoken out a few times that when you have Yesh Omrim and Yesh Omrim, the Shulchan Aruch, then he needs to pass like the second one. It's only when he has stam, the first day of stam without a Yesh Omrim, and then a Yesh Omrim, they pass like the first. When it's Yesh Omrim and Yesh Omrim, the psak is like the second. So he's going over here like the psak of the Yesh Omrim, which is really the psak of the Mordechai himself. The shame. The Rebbeinu Simcha and other Rishonim, the Ein Kiddush Tali b'ner. Kiddush does not depend on a ner. So you can make Kiddush even not from Mokam a ner. And so what do you do with that Gemara of Rabbah? The shot in the Gemara there is not, you're not going to be Yotze Kiddush out the ner, but Dimli Sakrit Choshaga, and you won't be able to eat a Suda Shabbos. So what he was worried about wasn't just about Kiddush, it was about Yotze Suda Shabbos, because you're not going to be able to see over there, be able to see and find food and wash and everything and make a Suda Shabbos. So it wasn't telling you that Kiddush is totally in there. You have no right from that Gemara. That's the Machlokes Rishonim over here, whether Ner is totally in Kiddush or not. The question is, B'chalal, like, what is the svor of the first Shita? Why should it be totally in Ner? Why should Kiddush depend on Ner? So the Aruch HaShulchan was bothered by this as well. I looked around and I found the Aruch HaShulchan is bothered by it, and he says the following. And he says a pshat, which I'm not sure if I think it's pshat needs a pshat. He says Vatam. The reason there's a shita like this is because they came into Hadlakas Ner Shabbos Choiva. We've made kavod Shabbos since the chiyuv Ner on Shabbos is a chiyuv because of kavod Shabbos. Hopefully we'll speak about this some other time. That there's different chiyuvim in Ner Shabbos. There's kavod Shabbos, there's onik Shabbos. It depends when. So I have some kashas on this Aruch HaShulchan altogether. But he says since the time of Hadlakas Ner is chova because of kavod Shabbos, he goes on to say the ikar haShabbos hu kiddush. Another strange statement. The ikar of Shabbos is kiddush. So you have kavod Shabbos in the ner, and the ikar of Shabbos is kiddush. You put those two things together. In kemamela tzarich liyos a kiddush l'or haner. Therefore, it needs to be or haner. Okay, so that's what he says. Now I don't understand the first statement that the ner Shabbos because of kavod Shabbos. The Brisker Rav explains that the hadlakas ner before Shabbos, that's kavod Shabbos. The Shabbos come in with it, but the ner on Shabbos is not kavod Shabbos. It's onig Shabbos. It's really the reason on Shabbos itself. Maybe it continues to be kavod Shabbos, but mainly you need to be on Shabbos at the time of the Suda because of onig Shabbos. And also, what does it mean that the ikar of Shabbos is the kiddush? And if the ikar of Shabbos is a kiddush and the ner is kavod Shabbos, how do the 2 and 2 equal 4 over here? How does that add up to say therefore the kiddush has to be with the ner? So he's saying something. The Aruch HaShulchan. You're welcome to take a look over there, but I'm not sure quite what he's saying. And I see that it's good that he's bothered by the kasha. What does this mean exactly? Why would kiddush depend on an ner? But halacha l'maisa, Mishnah Berurah, so the Shulchan Aruch ends off saying that. So if you're nene from the chutzner more than because of the avir, because it's very stuffy in the house, it's hard to breathe, and outside in the courtyard, it's going to be more geschmack. Zuvim in the house, there's a bunch of flies flying around, and outside it won't be. Usually it's the other way around, but that's, I guess, I don't know how things were different then. So makadosh b'chutzner b'ochel sham, you can make kiddush in the chutzner and eat there, even though you don't see the Nair. The Nair is inside the house. You're allowed to make Kiddush outside because in passing like the second Shita, the Kiddush does not depend on the Nair. Shaneris l'oneg d'stavu v'lo l'tzar. The Nairs were given to us because of oneg. Like I mentioned before, it's oneg Shabbos to have Nairs, not to cause tsar. And that's what makes sense. So the Shiur explains that what it means that it makes sense in the case of zvuvim, in the case of you're stuffy and you're not going to have oneg in the house, you're going to have oneg outside. But stam kacha, stamazoi, to decide to go somewhere else, and you shouldn't do. You should ideally, for sure, make the kiddush and make the suda next to the nearest, because there are shitas, like the first day of the Shulchan Aruch, there are shitas that hold that kiddush does depend on the nair. So for sure, it's better to be used to all the shitas. Just if you're stuck, or it's more difficult for whatever reason, then you're not mechuyev to do it. There's an interesting kiddush brought down from Shlomo Zalman Arbach. That's all that. If you light your nearest and you want to eat there and make kiddush there, but there's more, you realize there's better light somewhere else, there'll be more oneg, eat somewhere else, then you're for sure allowed to go to the other nearest and eat over there, even though those are not the ones you made the bracha on. So, because again, for the same svara that it was given for oneg and not for tsar, if it's going to be more geschmack somewhere else, then you're allowed to go to the second place. Okay, so with that we end this siman, and we will be giving Mar Makomas for the following sugya for Mitzvah Hashem this coming week. Kol Tuv, good Shabbos, and we'll see you all soon.